I'm going to talk to you about trust, the difference between the US and China, and how it can influence your business. So don't go away. Confucius said, 知之谓知之, 不知谓不知, 是知也. In his time, what he was talking about was that if you know the Tao, you know that you know the Tao. If you don't know the Tao, you don't know that you don't know the Tao. And so that is knowing, and that is knowledge or wisdom. And today, the way it applies basically is saying that if you know something, you know that you know it. If you don't know it, you may not know that you don't know it. So today I want to talk with you about trust and the difference between trust in the US and in China, and how do these two come together in a way that works well. Recently I was reading a post on LinkedIn that I found interesting, which sparked this concept. The idea that, wow, when the Chinese and the Americans come together, the sense of trust is so vastly different that it's just like they're on two different planets. This group of people were talking about the trust that they were building, and it was a small group of people coming together. Now let's put you in China and see how that works. Maybe a little bit challenging, because their way of seeing that process of building trust is going to be so different than it is in China. And even the interpretations of the process may be misinterpreted, because they may be seen here as meaning one thing and there as meaning another thing, which can be a little bit difficult or dangerous even. So what they're seeing is they're seeing people with the same basic cultural background. They're coming from the same basic environment, same basic education system, same basic upbringing, value set, ideals, Judeo-Christian background, even if you're not a believer or a practitioner. The ideals of good and bad, right and wrong that they are working with, they all agree on those things, and so they're able to easily find that space of trust. Take that and you put it into China, and you're going to have a very different outcome, because if you take the simplistic and the, oh, you're nice, you smile, you look at me, you talk with me, the way you talk gives me a sense that I can trust you, and so I'm going to allow you maybe to have access to my world, and maybe I am going to feel comfortable going into your world and believing what you say and taking everything you say for face value. So that goes to the expression in the 5 skills of Bing Fa, have a heart that protects, not a heart that harms. We want to protect ourselves in those relationships, but we don't want to do anything that harms anyone else. But then at the same time, how can we tell if we're interacting with a scoundrel, or as Confucius would say, 小人, or a respectable person, which would be a 君子? So how do we know the difference? Is sometimes the 小人are the ones that are the easiest to interact with. They're the ones that are making themselves available. They're the ones that are offering opportunities. They're the ones that are letting us know that, hey, I can do all of this for you. But then we need to ask ourselves, why are they doing this? And do I trust them, or should I trust them? It sometimes requires that the more simplistic backgrounded person needs to be careful more than the complex backgrounded person, because the complex backgrounded person already has all of those skill sets in place. Whereas coming from our perspective in the United States, we tend to be more trusting. So I just got back from out running around a little bit, and there's a situation that happened to me a long time ago when I was in China. I had been there for, I don't know, maybe about 7-8 years, and I had a lot of friends, Chinese. I didn't run around with the expats at night. I wanted to be with the locals. So I made a lot of Chinese friends, and I didn't really understand how to choose friends. I didn't understand how to judge the Chinese character. This is a story that it's really hard to tell, just because I know that it can be misinterpreted in so many different directions. So I want to first make a disclaimer that this is not something that was said to anybody except me, a naive, simplistic American. So coming from that perspective, I had already been in China for like 8 years, and this situation happened to me. Why do we want to be able to understand the Chinese characteristics, meaning the personality traits, the things that we need to be careful of, why we would trust versus why we would not trust? I was friends with a group of people, and amongst those people there were 3 of us who were friends. A guy, a girl, and myself. At one point, the man got very upset with me for a reason that I didn't understand. He stole my passport. And I let the police know what had happened. And they told me, we can go and arrest him, put him in jail for 15 years. If you're still going to be in China in 15 years, then you might want to reconsider, because he could come look for you. So I went to the woman to see what she could do, because in China things happen through relationships, not so much through the legal system. And so I went to the relationship that I had with this woman, and I told her what was going on. And so through her, I was able to get my passport back. After it was all over, she came to me and she said, in Chinese, she said, 不要相信任何中国人，包括我自己. What that means is, don't trust any Chinese, even me. I was shocked. Over the years, I kept that in the back of my mind, and I looked at situations, I contemplated what she was saying, and it came to my realization that she was speaking to me, a naive American. And mind you, I had been there for 8 years. I already spoke the language very well. There was so much going on in that area of trust and how to trust that it didn't make sense to my American concept of trust. I felt like I should be able to trust everybody. I should trust anyone. But in China, it didn't work that way. I came to find out that things that I did would actually create the challenges, whereas I didn't realize I was doing anything wrong. It was just my MO, my mode of operation from here in the United States that I took over there, and I didn't think about making those changes. Over the years, I recognized what was going on to where I was able to understand and respect the culture that I grew up in, the American way of earning trust and establishing trust. And when I'm interacting with the Chinese, I don't use that. I use the Chinese way. I use the Chinese, which is a little bit more, as the Chinese would say, 圆滑. You're sort of going around the edges. We would maybe say beat around the bush, but it doesn't have a negative connotation. 圆滑is actually a strategy that the Chinese apply in relationships and in getting things done, whereas we would tend to be more straightforward. We would get right to the point. To the Chinese is a little bit off-putting sometimes. It's a little bit awkward, but for us, that's what we do. So there again, when going into China, 入乡随俗, it's one of the 5 skills. Follow the village. Do what the village does. Follow their ways. So that would be, don't be so direct. Work with people who understand how to be less direct. We want to be able to work with people in ways that are smooth within their culture, not forcing them to adapt to our ways, which may be awkward for them and uncomfortable. We want people to be able to find a balance. And there again, that goes back to the concept of the yin-yang. We need to have this balance. We have these 2 elements, these 2 forces, not aggressive, but we have these 2 forces going on. And so how do we balance this out so that we can come up with a harmonious relationship? Yeah, I use words that are sort of, new age, I guess. Friendship, the Chinese love friendship. They want to be friends. It doesn't fit within our business mindset. Well, make it fit, because that's really the way you're going to be successful in China, is when you can understand the value of the relationship over the value of the agreement and the signed paperwork, which is in so many ways just sort of like, like a map. It's definitely not you're actually going to get where you're trying to go, because there's so much in between that agreement and your destination. And so the relationship is what's going to get you from that agreement to the destination. Don't hold the agreement as if this is the golden standard. The relationship should be the golden standard. And how to build a trustful relationship with Chinese is very different than building a trustful relationship with Americans. It takes more prudence, it takes more vigilance, and it may take more time. But once we have those relationships, so much magic can happen. So when we're doing business with Chinese, when we're working with the Chinese, we really want to be cognizant of the fact that we should not just trust them immediately right out the door. We need to take time. We need to look at them. We need to understand their backgrounds, and we need to understand what is going to happen in certain situations. And then at the same time, that brings us into another challenge of how do we work through these relationships when there are challenges in order to maintain the relationship, in order to continue to build the relationship. And so it is a strategy when dealing with China. We need to have a strategy, which means that we need to be working into situations in ways that are very planned out, in a sense of how we will react in certain situations, what we should do if this happens, and not just have a gut reaction or just shoot from the hip. So I hope you liked the video. Please click thumbs up below, and there's more information in the description down below. You'll find access to a copy of the 5 skills of Bingfa and my blog with other videos and information. Thanks and have a great day. 再见.